Yo, everybody, welcome back to the Greenway Sports channel. We are back on the Oddshark website where we are going to be going over every game for the week 2 in the NFL. If you want to go ahead and become a part of the Greenway team or the family, go ahead and check out the description below and we can definitely get that worked out for you. I hope everybody had a very successful and they cashed out and everything last week. I know our team did. We had a very good week. But let's go straight into week 2 here. We have the Packers favored by 2.5. Over-under is 43. The Packers defense looked very impressive against the Bears last week. The Bears were not able to run the ball much at all, and the passing game was non-existent. The Vikings, same thing, in all honesty. I mean, they played the Falcons, and they completely shut down the Falcons' rushing game. The Falcons' offensive weapons like Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, Mohamed Sanu, guys like that really didn't do too much. So you got to give the Vikings credit there. They definitely came to play. It was a home game for them. They seemed to struggle on the road. So that is one thing to consider. But at the end of the day, I really do like the Packers defense here. I think that they'll be able to stop the Vikings rushing attack, thus forcing Kirk Cousins to pass the ball more. And against the Packers secondary with guys like Darnell Savage, Adrian Amos, Jair Alexander, I do believe that they'll be able to do a pretty good job of limiting the success of the Vikings offense. So I do believe that the bet here is the Packers minus 2.5 at home, and I do like the under. I simply like the under just because it's a division game and you have two really strong defenses, but at the same time, you have two, what people would say, are elite quarterbacks in this game, and it's never good to pick the under when you have two good quarterbacks like that. So, this is a stay-away game in my opinion, but if I were to go with anything, I would take the Packers and the under. Let's move right along here to the second game. We have the Jaguars in Houston. Jaguars lost Nick Foles to a broken clavicle, unfortunately. He injured it on a touchdown throw, so that's pretty upsetting, but it was a beautiful ball too. I mean, pretty sure it was DJ Chark that caught it in stride in the end zone on a go route. The ball was perfect. It's really unfortunate for Nick Foles and Jaguars fans, but it is what it is. That's how football goes sometimes. But without further ado, let's get into it here. We have the Texans favored by 8.5 points. Over/under is 43. And the Texans last week, they weren't all that impressive. I was expecting more from them, to say the least. The defense wasn't anything great. They didn't stand out. The offense, DeAndre Hopkins had a decent game. He had a few drops here and there. But overall, the Texans hung in there. They had a chance to win. The Saints ended up making good plays, and they got the win. I mean, there's not much else to say there. The Jaguars, it's tough to say how well they're going to do with the backup quarterback there. Like I said, it's a tough one. You know that, again, it's a division game. You know that the Jaguars' defense is probably going to come to play. Jalen Ramsey versus DeAndre Hopkins is a very good matchup. But I think that the 8.5 points would be a lot if Nick Foles was playing. But that unknown factor with the backup quarterback is big here. If he doesn't come and have a good game, this could get ugly really, really fast. But so if anything, I'm taking Houston minus 8.5. I would not be comfortable with taking that in a real bet, just because, like I said, we're not sure how this backup quarterback is going to play. Looking at the tape last week, he actually did perform well when he did come in. So it's safe to assume that maybe he does have another good week. I mean, maybe he is a half-decent quarterback. It's just tough to say. We need to see more on him. We need to see how he performs against, better defenses, stuff like that. So I would go ahead and take the minus 8.5 and the under 43, with it being a division game. And you have two pretty impressive defenses, The Jaguars' defense is pretty impressive, and then you have the backup QB for the Jags going up against the Texans' defense. So that's a pretty good matchup there for the Texans. Next, we have the Colts going up against the Titans. You got Jacoby Brissett against Marcus Mariota. The Titans looked amazing last week. They completely dominated the Browns. The score in that game was a bit. It said too much. It was like 43, I think, to 12 or something like that. And the problem is Baker Mayfield at the end of the game simply he had like 2 or 3 picks. It just got ugly really, really fast. But for most of the game, it was even. It was the Browns and Titans even. I mean, the Titans did control the game, but the Browns were right there, and they were having a terrible game with penalties and such. So I think that's pretty important to remember, that the Titans didn't dominate as much as it seemed against the Browns. But at the same time, you do have the Colts with a backup quarterback in the game. And the Titans overall, they were impressive, to say the least. They were impressive against the Browns. So the -3.5 here is a good spot. It's a good pick there. And the over-under, I would have to say the under, just because, again, you have the backup quarterback. The Titans' defense looked very good against Baker Mayfield. Their secondary is impressive. And the Colts' defense, they're no pushover. They have Darius Leonard. They have some real studs over there. So the under does look pretty appealing there. And I would take the Titans minus the 3.5. And just a quick thing here, guys. All these are our quick little breakdowns of each and every game. I don't want to make these videos too long. If you do want in-depth information and stats and locks of the week, just go ahead, check out the description down below, and you will definitely be able to figure that out and reach out to me, and I can go ahead and get that to you. Not a problem at all. So, wow, look at that predicted score. 0.4 points. That's insane. No way that this game is as big of a blowout as it says here. That's pretty crazy. But the spread's -13 in favor of Baltimore, and the over-under is 46.5. Now you got to remember, Terrell Suggs is coming back to Baltimore. He was huge for this franchise in terms of Baltimore for many, many years. He won Defensive Player of the Year a couple times. The dude was a beast. And he's definitely missed in Baltimore. He's on like a 1-year deal for the Cardinals. This is a game that I'm simply going to have to stay away from. The Ravens dominated the Dolphins last week, but we don't know if that was legit. We don't know if that was real, because we're not sure if the Dolphins are simply just that bad. The Ravens could be that good, or the Dolphins could just be really that bad. There was poor tackling last week, blown coverages. Players didn't seem like they were putting in as much effort as they should have been in terms of the Dolphins. So we're not really sure how good the Ravens are yet. I'm actually going to this game, so I'm pretty excited for it. But it's going to be one of those games I'm going to just enjoy and have a good time at. But if I were to pick anything, I'm actually going to go with the Cardinals plus the 13. Kyler Murray did impress me in the fourth quarter against the Lions last week. I wish the Cardinals could get more of a consistent offense going. It seemed like it took them a while to finally figure out what Kyler was good at, and how to run the offense with him, at the helm there. So I do like the Cardinals plus the 13, just because I think Kyler Murray, you have Kyler Murray versus Lamar Jackson. You have 2 former Heisman winners. You have 2 pretty good defenses. I would say that the Ravens' defense is obviously better. They're more impressive. But at the same time, you got to remember the Ravens' front 7, they're very inexperienced. You have a bunch of guys that are kind of taking on a new role this year, when in years past they were backups, they were third string. They did perform well against the Dolphins. It's just one of those things where if the Cardinals can get a run game going, they'll definitely be able to pass the ball. The Ravens are really, really hurt on the secondary side. They have Jimmy Smith, who's going to be out. Marlon Humphrey is dealing with like a back issue, I believe. And Tavon Young is out for the year. So there's just a bunch of injuries with the Ravens corners. I know the Cardinals receiver position, I'm not really high on them. I think they're lacking, playmakers and stuff. Obviously, they have Larry Fitz, they have Christian Kirk. It's just I'm not sure if they're, as explosive as they need to be for this offense to really take off with the Cardinals. But I do think this game is going to be closer than people believe. And I do like the under. I see a lot of people like the over here, but I'm more with the under. I mean, the Ravens just put up 59 points. A lot of those plays were just big play, or a lot of those touchdowns were just big play touchdowns, especially with like Marquise Brown, stuff like that. Stuff like that doesn't happen every week. I know that the Ravens will be able to move the ball, in terms of running, but when you do that, it eats up clock, and I just think that it will eventually hit the under. I don't think that it's going to go over. That is a pretty high over-under in terms of the Ravens. Usually, you're used to seeing pretty low over-unders with the Ravens. But let's move on here. We have the 49ers going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. Spread is -1 in favor of the Bengals, and the over-under is 46. The 49ers were impressive last week, as well as the Bengals. Both teams were actually very impressive. I wish Jimmy Garoppolo would just... I wish he would just show more. It seems like how Shanahan is kind of playing it safe with Jimmy G, and that kind of concerns me. I'm not sure if he's the same quarterback he was a couple of years ago, so that does concern me. He threw a pick last week. And then on the other side here, we have the Bengals with new head coach and offensive coordinator Zach Taylor, who were actually very impressive last week. Andy Dalton threw for over 400 yards. The only negative side here is they did lose Joe Mixon. He has an ankle sprain. I don't believe he's going to be able to play this game. So you're going to have Giovanni Bernard starting. And then for the 49ers, they'll have Matt Breida starting because they lost Tevin Coleman to also a ankle sprain. So with the Bengals being at home, I do think that they have a little bit of a better defense than the 49ers. I know the 49ers are coming off of a high turnover game. They got a lot of turnovers off of Jameis Winston and the Bucks. But I know Andy Dalton, he's a turnover magnet, but with the new head coach, offensive coordinator, I do believe at home they'll be able to get this W, and they'll go 1-1 on the season along with the 49ers. The over-under, I would have to say the over. You have two pretty explosive offenses here. I think that the Bengals will be able to move the ball, and with Giovanni Bernard in there, they're going to have to pass the ball more than normal. They're not going to be able to be reliant on the run game. So I do like the over because I think with the Bengals passing the ball more, that's going to increase the pace, thus making the 49ers pass the ball more. And just at the end, result in the over, high-scoring game there. Next, we have the LA Chargers going up against the Detroit Lions in Detroit. The Chargers are favored by 1.5, and the over-under is 47. I know this sounds a bit funny here, but I do like the Detroit Lions here as the home dog. I saw some stat off of Bleacher Report. Shout out to Bleacher Report, by the way. They're awesome. I saw a stat saying, since 2010, home dogs in Week 2 after losing Week 1 are 24 against the spread or something. So I think that's actually a trend that is worth noting. I think it makes sense with the mental side of things and how the momentum works in the NFL, and just in general, just how the trend usually goes with this type of stuff. But I do like the Lions plus the 1.5. They did impress me last week. I think that they sort of let off of the gas pedal against the Cardinals, and that's why they were able to come back and tie the ball game up. I really wish the Lions, I think their biggest problem is they simply just don't know how to win. They are a losing franchise, and they do have a lot of talent on this team, and they have good coaches. I really don't know why they seem just they can't win. But at home here against a completely decimated Chargers team, in terms of injuries, they've lost a lot of guys. They're without Melvin Gordon still, and I think the Lions are going to be able to pull off the upset here. I think it's pretty telling considering that the Chargers are only favored by 1.5. Odds makers. I had this game. The Chargers should have been favored by like 3 or 4 points. I think that the odds makers are making it so low, so the public does go with the Chargers, which they are here. I think that they did it just so people would go with the Chargers because they really do believe that the Lions are going to win. When people see the spread only -1.5 with the Chargers, they're thinking, wow, that's amazing value. We got to hammer that. And a lot of sharp guys will definitely be on Detroit. I know it's like I said, they're a losing franchise. It's tough to bet with them. But it's just, I could see the game going in the favor of the Detroit Lions. And I do like the over here. Like I said, Chargers defense, they're decimated with injuries. The Detroit Lions are explosive offensively. And, the Chargers, they're going to be able to score no matter what. Phillip Rivers, he's going to push the ball down the field. I'm not concerned with the Chargers having trouble scoring. Next, we have the biggest spread of the week in terms of the NFL with the Patriots at Miami. Patriots are favored by 19 points, which is pretty insane. I haven't seen that big of a spread in a while in the NFL, and the over-under is 48.5. Now, if you've been watching NFL football for a while, Tom Brady struggles in Miami. I think it's a trend where it's weird because Tom Brady is so good. He's the GOAT. He's one of the best quarterbacks of all time, and it's weird that he would struggle against such a subpar team. But it is a division game. It's a team that they face each other. Every year, twice a year. So it is worth noting that he typically struggles against them in Miami. With that being said, you have Brian Flores going up against his old team. In my opinion, you got to think that the Dolphins are going to play for their coach. They're going to do their best. And Brian Flores, he knows the Patriots team. He's been with them for a while. Now he's with Miami, of course, but he's been with Patriots for a while now, and you got to think he knows that team pretty well. I think 19 points is a lot, and you got to think that Miami Dolphins are going to play for their coach, and they're going to play hard. I like them there with plus 19, and the over-under, I would have to say the under, but I wouldn't feel comfortable picking any here. I like the under simply because it's a division game. I think that the Patriots may struggle scoring with Brian Flores as the coach of the Dolphins. He's been practicing against Tom Brady for however many years, and I'm sure that he'll have some tips and tricks for the players to be able to help stop Tom Brady there. But that spread there is absolutely insane. I know that the Dolphins got crushed last week, and I know that there's a lot of speculation that the players are trying to leave. They want to get traded somewhere else, like Minka Fitzpatrick. But I do think that they will fight hard for their coach in that game there. Next, we have the Bills going up against the New York Giants in New York. Spread is the Bills favored by 2 points. Over-under is 44.5. The Bills were impressive last week with that comeback victory against the Jets. And the Giants were not so impressive. Eli Manning, I wish he would just force the ball down the field more. I know that's not typically what he's known for, but it just feels like he's checking it down way too much. He has three main guys. It's Saquon Barkley, Evan Ingram, and Sterling Shepard. Those are Eli Manning's three guys. The Bills, they have Traymon Edmonds to stop Evan Ingram. I think that's a very good matchup. They also have some good safeties that should be able to keep up with his speed and his physicality. Sterling Shepard, the Bills' corners are pretty impressive, but then you have Saquon Barkley. I think this is a game where Saquon could literally take over. The Bills, I think it's worth noting how they struggled to score until late in the game against the Jets. I know that the Jets defense is impressive, but this is a second away game in a row for the Bills. I know that it was just against the Jets, and now it's against the Giants. It's all in New York, Buffalo, New York, and of course the Jets. It's all in New York. So it's worth noting that yes, it's their second away game, but at the same time, they're not really going that far at all. They're still pretty much home, really. So with all that being said, I do like the Giants plus the 2 points at home here. I think Saquon might have a monster day. And I also like the under simply because the Bills, offensively, I think that they can be explosive at times, but they are extremely inconsistent. Even their players are inconsistent. They got guys like Cole Beasley, John Brown, Josh Allen. Their running back is now Frank Gore, and they have Devin Singletary. So he's a rookie now, and I just think that they have a lot of inconsistent guys, and they could struggle to score, And I do like the Bills. I like their team. But for this game, I like the Giants. I like I would like to think that Eli Manning is going to do somewhat good. He's going to somewhat impress this year with Daniel Jones right in his rearview mirror. So I do like the Giants plus the 2 points here, and I'll go ahead and take the under. I like that. We're going to move on here. We have the Seahawks going up against the Steelers. And I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to go ahead and try to do my best to keep this video under 30 minutes. We're getting towards the end of the games here. The Steelers are favored by 3.5 points. Over-under is 47. The Steelers were absolutely crushed by the Patriots last week. As a Ravens fan, that was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. The Patriots absolutely dominated the Steelers. They could not do a single thing. I do think that plays an important role into this game. But let's first go over to the Seahawks and talk about last week. Last week with the Seahawks, I think their receivers were somewhat impressive. It was tough to tell if the Bengals were just playing that good or if the Seahawks were just playing that bad. I'm not sure. It was tough to tell when I was looking back at the tape because the Bengals did have a couple of lucky plays that made the game a lot closer, and the Seahawks were able to move the ball. They ran the ball well. They passed the ball well. Defensively, I would like to see more. They brought in a lot. Brought in a guy like Jadeveon Clowney. They had Bobby Wagner. Their front seven is solid, but their defensive backfield is weak. And with Ben Roethlisberger there, I would like to think, coming off of an embarrassing week like last week, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they have a good head coach in Mike Tomlin. They're going to come back looking to do well this game. And, if you believe in teams who perform really bad one week and they come back the next week and perform well because of that bad week they just had, the Steelers are definitely the pick here. And with that being said, I'm going to be taking the Steelers here minus the 3.5. And the over-under, it's a tough one. With the Seahawks secondary being so weak and with Ben Roethlisberger struggling to pass so much last week, I believe that the Steelers are going to come passing. They're going to come hard. Juju Smith-Schuster is going to have one hell of a game. I wish that the Steelers had a better supporting cast instead of just Juju Smith-Schuster. They have Vance McDonald, but he didn't get involved much at all last week against the Patriots. He was completely shut down. And if you remember last year, he was a tank for them. He really helped them move the ball. I look forward to seeing them, the Steelers, getting the ball back to Vance McDonald more and forcing the ball to guys like James Conner, Juju Smith-Schuster, and pretty much just getting the ball in the hands of their playmakers. They were trying to force passes to guys like James Washington and their other, second and third string wide receivers, which makes sense because they did have man-to-man coverage most of the time, and they should have been able to beat their man. And even when they did, Ben Roethlisberger did not make an accurate ball to give them a chance to make any catches. So it was a weird game. The Steelers seemed completely off. I see them coming back strong this week. The Seahawks typically struggle on the road early in the season, anyways. I like the Pittsburgh Steelers minus the 3.5, and I do like the over because I see Big Ben having a good game, bounce back game, and the Seahawks do have the offensive firepower to keep up to a degree. So I do like the over there to a certain extent. Moving on, we have the Cowboys going up against the Redskins in Washington. The Washington Redskins actually impressed me a lot last week. Going up against the Eagles in the first half there, they completely dominated the Eagles on all sides in every way possible. The Redskins were able to pass the ball, they were able to run the ball, they were able to stop the Eagles both passing and running. The Redskins' special teams is pretty good. They have a good kicker, good punter. So, with all that being said, I actually like the Redskins here, plus the 6 points. You have the Cowboys. Dak Prescott is coming off of an absolutely huge game. And just looking at the course of his career, typically when he has a big game, he comes back next week and struggles. With this being a division game and the Redskins having a pretty good defense, in my opinion. I think they're solid on multiple positions for the defense. Secondary, the front seven, they're all pretty impressive for me. I think the Cowboys are going to struggle to run the ball, and if they force Dak Prescott to pass the ball a lot, I think that could be bad. To sum it up here, I do believe that the Cowboys will be able to win the game. I just don't believe that they'll be able to do it in such a fashion that they'll be able to cover the 6 spread here. So I do like the plus 6 with the Redskins. A lot of people do like the Cowboys, though, minus the 6. Obviously, as you can see right here, a lot of the pundits and analysts and everything, they all like the Cowboys minus the 6. I just like the Redskins at home. I think Case Keenum is an underrated quarterback. I think he's good enough to keep them in games. I don't think he's good enough to help them win games, but I think he's good enough to keep them in games. I wish Jordan Reed was playing in this game. He's still going to be out with a concussion, so that is a big factor. The Redskins offensively, they're going to be leaning on Adrian Peterson. And, he was benched last week. Or actually wasn't benched, he was just inactive. They completely didn't suit him up or anything. So he could come back, perform well. If he performs well, the play action pass will be there for the Redskins. So this is not a lock at all, but it's a feeling that I do think the Redskins will keep it close. And I do like the under with this being a division game. I really do like the under. Not sure why people are high on the over here. You have a division game, you have 2 pretty strong defenses, and the Redskins' offense is pretty weak. So I do like the under there. That's a pretty high over-under at 46.5. Sorry, guys. This is about to go over 30 minutes here. My apologies. We got about 5 games left here. I'll try to make them quick. We have the Chiefs going up against the Raiders. The Raiders did impress against the Broncos last week on Monday Night Football. It was the last Monday Night Football game in the Raiders Stadium there. And then you have the Chiefs, who absolutely, Patrick Mahomes is a beast. He's a monster. They're going to be able to score no matter what, even if Tyreek Hill is not there. I do worry that with the Raiders, they completely strapped up the Broncos receiving core. The Raiders defensive backs were fairly impressive, in my opinion. I think that the defense is pretty good. With this being a division game and the Raiders, they were pretty convincing last week with how they performed. I do like the plus 7, but at the same time, it's a very tough call. With Patrick Mahomes, it could be a 3-point game going into the 4th, and then all of a sudden, the Chiefs are up by 17. I never like betting against Patrick Mahomes. I like betting with him, not against him. So, with that being said, this is a stay away there. The Raiders, they did go up against the Broncos last week. Joe Flacco, he definitely was not used to that offense or those, offensive weapons for the Broncos. So I do think that played a factor. The Broncos scored 3 field goals and they only had 9 points going into like the third quarter, I believe. So I think that's important to note, because if that's Patrick Mahomes, that's 21 points. That's not 9 points. He's going to get those touchdowns. He's going to force the ball in there. So with that being said, I do like the over here. It will be a high-scoring game unless the Chiefs cannot, if they can't force the ball downfield as much as they would like to, because they are missing Tyreek Hill with that shoulder injury. So overall, it's a stay-away game there. It's a division game. We typically like to stay away from those. Next, we have the Saints going up against the Rams. A little bit of a rematch from the playoff game where the Saints got a bit screwed over there. Sorry, guys. This is taking a minute to load here. There we are. The Rams are favored by 2 points. Over-under is 52. Simply because it's Sean Payton and Drew Brees, I believe that the Saints are going to be able to win this game. I'm not big on the Rams this year. I'm not sold on Jared Goff as much as other people are. I do believe he's a good quarterback, but in games like these where he's going to have to play on that next level, I'm not sure if he is there. If I had to pick here, I'm taking Drew Brees over Jared Goff. That's pretty much how it's going here. I'm taking the team that was absolutely screwed over by the refs last year over a team who honestly didn't look all that impressive last week. Todd Gurley finally got going more towards the end of the game in the rushing game, and the defense wasn't anything special. I'm just not as sold on the Rams as much as like everybody else is. I do like the Saints, however. The +2 there, you're getting good value. I would take that, and I would stay away from the over/under. The Saints, they're going to come into this game ready to play. They're going to definitely do their homework. They're going to do their, studying film, everything like that. They're going to be ready for this game. I could see it falling under, uncharacteristically, for these, explosive offenses. But you see right here, 70% of the public is with the over. So the under or the over isn't really a good pick in my opinion. But the Saints plus the 2, it's a pretty good pick in my opinion. But we got the Bears going up against the Broncos. And you heard it here first, guys. I am taking the Broncos as the home dog to win this game outright. I think that with, after week 1 with Joe Flacco getting used to this offense, getting used to this team, the scheme, everything like that, I think he'll be performing considerably better than he did last week. And the Broncos defense, they were not able to get any type of pressure against the Raiders last week. That will not be the case at all this week. That defense is going to play their hearts out for Vic Fangio, I believe, and who's a former coach of the Bears here. And I just see the Broncos winning this game, and in the papers in Chicago, you're going to see Bears fall to 0-2, sophomore slump or whatever. Not sophomore slump, but last year they had a very good year, and this year they may have a down year. Their defense is still impressive, but offensively, I think that Mitchell Trubisky, he's in the same category, for me at least, as Jared Goff. They're very good quarterbacks. They're athletic, but at the end of the day, they're not elite. They aren't good enough to win in like the big moment, in my opinion, at least. I could be wrong. It's just how I think. It's what I've seen looking at the tape and looking at these guys over the course of their careers. I just believe in the Broncos defense, and I believe in Joe Flacco to perform better than he did last week. And I think that's all he's going to have to do to be able to win this game. I also like the under here with 2 really defensive-minded teams. I know both teams are coming off of weak offensive performances, so typically teams like that bounce back with good offensive performances, but like I said, you have 2 really good defenses here. So I would take the Broncos plus the 2 and the under Let's move on here. We have Sunday Night Football. This is a great game here. Seriously, guys. You have the Eagles going up against the Falcons. The Eagles win this game almost every year. The past few years they've won this game no problem. Last year, I think they won 18-12 for the first game of the season. So, the Eagles are favored by 2 points, and the over-under is 52.5. Again, I told you that stat earlier about the home dog. They're, I think it was, 25-8 against the spread, I believe. The home dog is after losing week 1. So the Falcons would fall under that category. And just how this game matches up, it's pretty interesting because the Eagles, in terms of the trenches, definitely have an advantage. However, they did just lose their starting defensive tackle, Timmy Jernigan. I think that's a very, very big piece there, and I think that's not as talked about as much as it should be. That defensive front, that sets the tone for that team, and if the defensive line and the front seven, if they aren't performing well, that secondary can really get exposed. We saw that with the Redskins last week. The Redskins have arguably the weakest receiving corps in the league. They didn't even have Jordan Reed last week, and they were dotting up the Eagles' defense. And if a team like that can do that, you got to believe that the Falcons' offense, with guys like Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, Mohamed Sanu, Austin Hooper, Devontae Freeman, they have playmakers everywhere. You got to believe that even with a weaker offensive line, that they're going to be able to push the ball. They're going to be able to pass the ball. And with that being said, I like the Falcons plus the 2 points here. I also like the over. The Eagles, they did win last week against the Redskins. I believe the score was 30-27. And my biggest problem here is if you take away DeSean Jackson and that deep ball last week, this team struggled heavily. Carson Wentz didn't look amazing. He definitely looked accurate towards the end of the game, throwing all those deep passes to DeSean Jackson. They looked good in terms of that. I'm just saying, if a team were to take away that deep threat, what else did the Eagles have? I do believe they'll be able to run the ball, thus opening up like a play-action game and getting guys like Zach Ertz open and Alshon Jeffrey, Nelson Aguilar. But I do believe that with DeSean Jackson having such a good game last week, the Falcons are going to make it, a key. They're going to make it an important piece to make sure that they stop DeSean Jackson and that deep threat. And, with all that being said, I think that the over will definitely hit there. I know it's a high over-under, but I think the Eagles will be able to move the ball with more of a play-action attack and running the ball. And then the Falcons, they're going to be able to pass the ball on this team no problem. I mean, the Eagles' secondary is very, very weak, and unfortunately, I believe that is going to be what holds this team back this year. The defensive backfield is just not good at all, in my opinion. If you look back at that game against the Redskins, I mean, you got second and third string guys on other teams. In terms of like the Redskins receivers, if they're on another team, they're third string, they're fourth string, they may not even be on the team if they're on another team. So the fact that they were putting up such a good game against that secondary, you got to think that the Falcons will definitely be coming in ready to play for that game. But Monday Night Football, we have the Browns going up against the Jets. Sam Darnold is out with mono. He got sick. He'll be out for a couple weeks, if not more. I did not know that mono would keep him out for that long. They were saying maybe even 4 weeks. They were saying how he lost some weight already, and it's just a really tough case of it. So they have Trevor Siemian as the starting quarterback for the Jets. I know this is a home game. You have your classic home dog here after going 0-1. But at the same time, the Browns last week, looking at their tape, they did not perform bad at all against the Titans. Obviously, in the fourth quarter, they did. But the first 3 quarters, I mean, they performed well. They just crushed and absolutely self-destructed with penalties. They had over 180 yards worth of penalties. they constantly were being put in like 3rd and 20 situations defensively. Whenever the Titans it would be 3rd down, and the Browns would just jump off sides, have a neutral zone infraction and just give away these, first downs. And I think that they'll definitely go into practice this week looking at making sure that they're focusing on the little things and making sure that that does not happen again. They're going to make sure that they play technically, like, fundamentally sound game here against the Jets. And with Baker coming off of a 3-interception game, I do like the Browns to perform well. The -6.5, I know that's a lot of points, especially being an away team who struggled heavily last week, but I do like that. I do like the Browns -6.5, and I also like the under. Le'Veon Bell has a bit of like a shoulder issue. He says he's fine, but it's worth noting that he has a shoulder issue. It was sore enough, I guess, for him to get a MRI on it. So you have that, and then defensively, the Jets are a bit banged up. C.J. Mosley's injured. Quentin Nelson or Quentin Williams is injured. Their first-round pick, the defensive tackle. Those guys are still going to play this week, but it's worth noting, like I said, that they are injured. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Browns and the under on Monday Night Football there. But I appreciate you guys sticking around here for the rest of the video. I'm sorry it was 40 minutes. I try to make it as quick as possible. Go ahead, like the video, subscribe, leave a comment down below. Let me know if you're thinking anything else for these games. If you have a different prediction or anything, give me your locks of the week, man. Let me go ahead, let me know what you think. And make sure you, like I said before, you check the description down below. Either become a team member of the Greenway Sports or simply become a part of the family. Either way, you get great information from some of the best analysts in the sports betting game. I appreciate you guys sticking through with me for the rest of this video and everything, and I hope we all make money. Best of luck, guys. Everybody have a good one. Thanks.